The views, comments, stories, and opinions shared within this podcast are my own or those of my guests, and in no way represent the views of the company or companies that I or we work for. All stories, events, and tales shared within this episode may or may not have happened in the manner in which they are told. They may or may not have even happened at all. The details have been changed to protect the innocent and the guilty alike. This is Squawk Ident. You're listening to Squawk Ident, an aviation podcast dedicated to the journey and the challenges surrounding the life and career of Aviator Tony and his guests. Together, we will explore the pathways to an aviation profession, the realities of what a professional aviator can expect in today's market, and we will share many stories along the way. I'm your host, Aviator Tony, an airline pilot currently flying for a legacy airline with close to 20 years on the flight line. This is episode 20 of Squawk Ident, recorded on the 20th of January 2020, from the 15th floor of the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Miami, Florida, via the mobile Aviator Sound Studios. On this episode of Squawk Ident, I have the opportunity to speak with a guest I had on the show on episode 19, Mr. Rob DeJesus. We had so much more we wanted to talk about, so we decided to make time to discuss how our flight schedules often get torn apart due to all kinds of things from weather events to training displacements. We also explore the differences between performing manual revisions versus pressing the sync button on an EFB. We even share a story about the power of a Class Act captain and the power of the parking brake. All this and more on this episode of Squawk Ident. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show, right after a brief word from our sponsors. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. I have been on a trip here the last 32 hours or so. Started a trip yesterday evening, did a red-eye into Miami International. And the trip kind of fell apart, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. But I was very happy to hear from a previous guest from episode 19 that he was also on an overnight, and he says, hey, you know what? I had so much fun on the last show. Let's do it again. And hey, I am all for it. So please help me in welcoming back to the show, Mr. Rob. How you doing, Rob?
Hey, Tony, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back again.
Oh, my pleasure.
I didn't mess things up enough on episode 19 that you wouldn't have me back, but here we are again.
Episode 19 was a huge success. It took me probably a good, as most of the fellow podcasters know out there, about 4 hours to edit. It was the longest show I have recorded so far. We clocked in a little over an hour and 40 minutes of discussions with you, and to add the intro, the outro, and background music and sound effects and vocals, stuff like that.
Well, you put in a lot of hard work, and I thank you for that. That's awesome.
Now, we had an absolute blast. Our back and forth was very smooth and seamless, and I appreciate that very much. The editing was not too bad, and excited to have you use some new equipment. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, Tony recommended if I'm going to be a guest on his show that I get for podcasting, and I recommended a microphone, and I went out on Amazon and purchased a condenser microphone. And so this is the first time using it. I'm also on an overnight in Minneapolis, where it's only I think the last they said it was 7 degrees outside. So I'm nice and comfortable inside here talking to Tony on my brand new condenser microphone. And hopefully it sounds good for the audience. It's a great little setup. It's portable, and it works out great for right now for getting started. So thanks for the recommendation.
It sounds great. Well, you might hear some clicking here throughout. We're actually, because of we're both traveling and on the road, we're actually recording this through the H4n Pro handheld recorder. And on my end, I've got the ATR 2100 microphone plugged in with the XLR through channel 1 on the multi-track recording mode. And what I'm doing here is plugging in the audio through a cable coming out of an iPad, and we're actually on a FaceTime call right now. So occasionally there's a little Wi-Fi lag and some popping, but I hope it's not too distracting. But here we go. So
it's amazing, the technology these days. I can't believe we're doing this.
It really is. I should be recording this and you having a YouTube channel or something. Who knows?
Right.
But, too much work.
There you go. Something to work on.
Too much work. So we kind of had a little bit of a chit chat this morning, talking about what we've been doing since we recorded last a few days ago, and my sequence, I was really excited about it because last week, as we kind of mentioned in, I believe it was episode 18, I had to get my Latin terrain qualification, which here at Legacy Airlines every 18 months, both captain and first officer need a Latin terrain qualify checkout if you're international qualified and you're going into a high terrain area like South America. And I was able to do that. It was a kind of a grueling process. In 3 days, I had to sit in the jump seat twice and deadhead twice, and it was kind of a grueling, tiring situation because when you're it's like when you're at the controls, time flies because you're occupied, your mind is busy monitoring and doing what you have to do. But when you're sitting in the back of an airplane and you're dealing with, stowing luggage, so I feel for passengers that travel.
It's brutal.
Yeah,
it can be brutal and exhausting. For sure.
Absolutely. And so this week, since I am Latin terrain qualified, and my line had a wonderful, I believe it was a 28 or 29 hour layover in Quito, in Ecuador.
Lucky.
Yeah, 7,800 foot, I think, is the elevation of the airport, and then the hotel is a couple thousand feet higher than that. So,
wow.
I was given a lot of advice from captains that I've been flying with that, you're going to Quito? Cool. Well, you take an aspirin as soon as you land, because the elevation will get you. They were telling me which restaurants to go to, which, where to get a good beer or what to order. And I was really excited about the trip.
Did you think about going for a run at that elevation too?
I lived in Albuquerque for about 4 years. And over there, my house was at 5,100 feet.
Oh, so you're close.
And I was running all the time. And I can tell you, it makes a huge difference. Lung capacity, your VO2 max changes as a runner.
Totally.
So...
And I have some experiences like that with racquetball. It's it's a whole different topic for sure.
Did you ever train like in
different?
You train in Denver or anything, or
sure? I'll train at higher elevations, but also the ball, is with different pressure. It has a different bounce to it. It bounces higher. It's faster, and just that slight change in energy level of the ball throws your timing way off on the court as a player. So, that's something that you have to learn to adjust to and, fairly quick amount of time, because if you're playing a racquetball tournament, let's say in Texas, where it's pretty close to being at sea level or, 600 feet or so. Mm-hmm. And then you, the next week you have a tournament in, let's say, Denver, where you're, close to 5,000 feet and moving at a different rebounds, the bounce is going to have a higher bounce. And so you just have to make that adjustment fairly quickly. And sometimes you just don't have enough time. And plus your body physically needs to, like you said, you need to adjust to the oxygen level. So anyway, that's can affect not only individuals, but athletes and everything, the way they play.
Yeah, I never would have thought about that about the ball,
Yeah.
but it makes sense because the pressure in the ball is a constant.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And that whole deflate gate thing is full of crap too, man. That ball was not. Tom Brady didn't let the air out of that ball. Cold.
It was cold.
It's science.
Yeah.
Man. It's science. Anyway.
Well, wait a minute. If it's cold outside and the ball was inflated in a factory at 72 degrees at a certain pressure, and now you put the ball in a colder area, the ball would be expanding, so there would be more pressure in the ball. But if it's hot outside, then the ball would be softer. So I don't know about your theory, buddy. I don't know,
man.
We can sit here and talk about physics.
Does it get denser? I don't know. Isn't that what happens?
Density, altitude? I don't know. I mean, that's related to aviation, sure.
Yeah.
So I was really looking forward to this trip.
Sequence, yeah.
I really was. And I've never been to Quito before. And I had 4 days off. I was working on the house. I mean, I was busy this week at home. And as you know, we have our, I joke around and call it the honey-do list, but it's the projects that I want to get done.
Yes.
I installed a electrical box and a ceiling fan in one of the bedrooms.
Oh, wow.
What else did I do? I cleaned up the backyard and got the wood pile in order.
Yeah.
And
you're a normal person.
On my days off, I don't sit there at the airport and go, check out that P-51. Let's go fly that thing. I'm doing stuff, right? Trimmed a lemon tree, got up on the roof, and was like with my pole chainsaw, and I was chumming down that tree, and I ended up with 5 buckets of lemons.
Oh my goodness!
We have a Meyer lemon tree that's 40 years old in the back of the house. It's been there since my daughter, my wife was a kid living there because we're living in the same house, and that she grew up in. And so all my neighbors got a bag of lemons.
Lemons.
We were going around the neighborhood, knocking on doors, going, "Hey, how you doing? You want some lemons from the tree?" Oh yeah, sure.
That's funny.
Who turns down lemons, right?
Right. Use it for everything.
So yeah, I was busy and I was looking forward, and I check my schedule as I'm the day before a trip. I always
same thing.
Check the weather, check the schedule. What am I going to pack?
Right.
Who am I flying with? All the answers. That way I can start setting alarms on my phone so I know what time to get ready, what time to leave the house. And I look at my trip, and it shows that it's been modified. But I didn't get any kind of I didn't get any notification. Are you listening?
Of course not. Because you're in rest.
You didn't call me. And so I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, so I see the leg where I fly to Miami on day 1.
Uh-huh.
Day 2, nothing. Day 3, nothing. Day 4,
wow.
Late night flight leaving Miami back to LA, and I'm thinking,
wow,
70 how many hours in Miami?
You're basically becoming a temporary resident in Miami.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, okay, why? So I'm looking into the deeper codes of the schedules, and I go, okay, I was displaced due to training, a DT code on the schedule. So I'm like, okay, so that means if I'm going to do this, maybe I'll fly there and I'll jump seat back or non-rev back home. I can spend a day at home, and then on the last day, jump seat back to Miami, and then I'll be there with a few hours to spare, and I can fly back. Yeah. And start looking at loads.
Yep. And that usually is what gives you the stop sign, like, nah, this is not going to work.
And I thought, okay, I could sit in the jump seat. I could list for the jump seat and do that. But flying 5.5 hours to Miami to turn around on a red eye and then have to sit in the jump seat and not fall asleep and not be comfortable and be noisy and
fly all the way back across the country in those conditions.
So I thought, let's make a vacation out of it. I've got a hotel room provided. So I started looking at, again, the loads were the issue. I could not get the family on the flight. It had like 5 or 6 open seats, but it was
and that's what's disappointing with us, with our legacy airlines these days, is situations like this would be a perfect time to have a small little family vacation. Obviously, today's Martin Luther King Day. And so, everybody has school, doesn't have school today. And, I kind of thought about the same thing myself, but, with the loads being so heavy, our travel benefits of, non-revving around the system are really what I like to nickname them their travel restrictions. And, so you can't get anybody. I shouldn't say you can't get anybody, but it's really tough to get, your family members or some of your guests, non-rev anywhere these days, unless you want to go to like Midland, Texas, or no offense to Midland, but there's, those are the ones where the loads are really low, but nobody really wants to go to Midland or San Angelo.
What are you talking about?
Right. Hey, I live there. No, hey, those are great places, by the way, but just not for, we want to go to the beach or somewhere warm, get out of the cold,
And especially if you have grade school children, when they're in school, every time the loads are decent. So, you must travel to some exotic places on your days off, like
not very often. No.
Plus, I don't want to sit in another airplane. So that's it was a disappointment, but I made some phone calls, and I know there are some pilots out there that work for the company going, "Oh, why did you call anybody? Don't call anybody." I'm like, look, they still have me at the airport hotel.
Wow.
Okay, which no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if I could get my family out there, first off, that would have been great, and I wouldn't care because you rent a car and what do you need a hotel for other than sleeping?
Right.
But I was like, no. And then, so I call crew scheduling and I say, hey, First Officer Tony here. And I see that my schedule has been modified due to training displacement. Could you verify for me, for one, that this schedule as a line holder will remain the same? I'm not going to get some surprise. By the way, you're reassigned. They can't do that. I knew they couldn't do that, but I wanted it to be on the recorder to say, no.
And also, technically, once you land, you're released into rest, so they can't contact you. So it'd have to be assigned to you prior to arriving in Miami if they were to reassign you or reschedule you.
I'm not sure, but I think it's noon the day before the trip or something like that.
Yeah, there's something contractually like that they have to do.
Right.
But we all know that they have tried to circumvent all the contractual stuff and just, see if you'll bite at their bait that they're throwing at you and just take the assignment outside of the contract. So,
right. And we're pay protected. So, it was in my line. That was my trip. So if that sequence value was, I think it was something like 20 hours or 25 hours or whatever it was, if it falls apart, even if I'm sitting at the hotel somewhere for 4 days because of a storm or whatever, I'm pay protected. So it's not like I'm losing the money because I didn't fly
it. Right.
So it behooves me to sit in the hotel, drink beer, eat chicken wings, watch football.
Absolutely.
Whatever. Yeah. So I just wanted to make sure, really, I wanted to hear them say it. And at the same time, I wanted to improve upon the hotel.
Absolutely.
Because originally we were staying at Airport Hotel by one company. And then we were going to go to Quito, stay there the night. And then on day 3, fly back to Miami, stay at a different hotel.
Miami hotel.
Right. Yep. And then fly back to LA. Yeah. And so I said, well, can we improve upon this hotel? It's a long layover now. Give me something closer to places where I can go eat. Maybe downtown or by the beach or somewhere where I can, I have the amenities that I'm going to require for 72 hours.
Yeah.
And she says, well, I'll put you through to the hotel desk. Okay. So I transfer over to the hotel desk. And the guy that answered the phone,
did you get anywhere with him?
He goes, well, it's in the contract. You just have to stick with your original hotel because that's what has been assigned to you. It's in your schedule. That's like, so what you're telling me is I have to check into Hotel A in Miami, and then the next day I need to check out, get transportation to go to Hotel B.
Right.
And then go there. Is that what you're telling me? He's like, well, no, that's not. I'm like, you'll just stay at the first one. I'm like, so it's changing. So it's not.
Right.
And he goes, well, I have no power over that. It's whatever the hotel department. I'm like, well, I thought you were the hotel. He goes, well, we're the people that fix the issues. Like if you get to a hotel and there's no hotel or they have no rooms or something went wrong, I can fix it. But I'm not going to change your hotel because you don't like it. I'm like, oh, okay,
yeah.
thank you. Have a nice day.
Right, we're done with
I
you.
hang up the phone and I check on my phone the app that we use for Legacy Airlines, and it says hotel pending.
Mm-hmm.
So in the time that I spoke with crew scheduling, they saw that my sequence fell apart because the training department ripped it apart.
Right.
Which is fine. I understand.
Yeah.
But the crew schedule, the hotel department, or
totally
the training department didn't fix the flying part of it. So once I notified crew scheduling, they sent me to the hotel desk to kind of see if I can get my request. But at the same time, they removed that issue about Hotel A and Hotel B. So in that process, they were taking care of it. But the guy that answered the phone at the hotel desk wasn't very helpful.
No.
It was basically not my problem, right? So I waited overnight, and the next day, which was the morning where we were recording our last show there, I checked my phone and it still said pending. I was starting to, okay. So I said to myself,
nervous about it.
As soon as we're done recording episode 19, I'm going to check, and if there's no hotel, I'm calling a chief pilot or duty chief or someone, and I'm not going to get on an airplane to land somewhere and they go, well, we don't have a hotel for you.
We don't have a hotel for you.
So luckily, as soon as I checked, they put me down here at the Hyatt Regency downtown, which is right across the street from Whole Foods. It's not the beach, but there's plenty to do downtown here.
That's great.
So that's what I did.
Yeah. But the crazy thing is, though, is about the whole topic is you almost really shouldn't have to go through all that with the company that we're working for, with all the technology and all the complexities and everything that are all this should just almost be seamless with the ways that the way we operate. But man, it's not. You actually have to have your finger on almost everything that affects you, because unless like your exact example, unless nobody knows that they have to fix it.
Yeah. Well, trust but verify. I trust that they're going to take care of me. If I would have not have said anything, I believe that I probably would have ended up correcting the situation somehow, either in the process of the sequence, or maybe by the day before they would have fixed it. Maybe it was on somebody's Post-it note on their desk and it would have been fixed.
You never know. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
you're right.
But like I said, trust but verify. So I called. I don't have a problem calling the company of crew scheduling and saying, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I just have
neither
that.
Do I. Yeah.
There are those among us aviators that are like, "Oh, you don't call the company. That's not my job."
Right.
And if they can't get me, then I'm just going to go to the most expensive hotel and expense it.
And you got to basically just choose your battles too. I mean, you definitely want to operate within the confines of our agreed upon contract, but there's some cases where you got to just do what's best for you. And I would not want to be at an airport hotel for the amount of time that your sequence would have had you there. And that's I don't know if listeners understand that the reasons why we would want to change from an airport hotel to something more applicable to a longer layover. Just the airport hotels don't have the amenities for a longer stay.
Right.
Food around and food choices, healthy food choices. Usually those shorter hotels are the airport hotels.
Right.
And those are the ones that we're expected to just check in, get a decent night's rest, maybe one small meal, and then head out the door and go back to work. Where the longer layovers, you're going to be there for more than one or two meals. So, you're expected to get a good night's rest, and then you need to get out and, nourish your body and maybe get a workout in. So, yeah, that's totally understandable, man. You got to take care of your your overnight situation before you get there.
Right.
Because I mean, hey, if you were going on a trip, you make a reservation at a hotel. You do that before you leave, right?
Right.
And so the same thing here. You're going on a work trip, and we do normally know where we're going to stay, and but in this particular situation, because of the change, it was no longer going to be good enough. So we got to see if we could get it better for us. So yeah, good job.
Yeah. So here I am. I was excited to, we text back and forth last night, and I knew you had a late night flight onto your sequence. Why don't you tell us about how your trip started out?
Well, we just started this sequence yesterday, and it's a 4-day sequence, and it started out with just one leg from our home base in Dallas up to Minneapolis, and it was a late sign-in, meaning I didn't have to be at the airport till about 7:50, late last night or yesterday evening, and we're just going to fly one leg from DFW to the frozen tundra of Minneapolis. Where
it's so beautiful.
It's only about 7 degrees out right now, and it was earlier on. There was some snow and some flurries. So, anyway, this sequence is one that I've actually been trying to trade out of because I don't like to be in the northern tier of the United States if I can help it.
Yeah.
But anyway, this particular sequence just started, so far so good. But the previous sequence I had fell apart. And it was very similar to your situation where, things changed and you kind of have to just adapt and make do. We were actually scheduled for a Denver overnight in my previous trip, and there was a storm system moving through the Denver area, and it affected all of the Midwest states and up into Chicago. And we were flying, I can't remember, we were coming back from El Paso to Dallas, and then the next flight was going to be from Dallas to Denver. Well, as we were cruising at 30,000 feet, we get an ACARS message from crew scheduling telling us that, hey, you've now been reassigned to do a Raleigh-Durham overnight.
Don't you love that?
And
you're notified.
You're now notified. It's official, right? And so the captain was the individual that received the message because I was doing the flying. So he pulls the message off the printer and he hands it to me and it says, "Hey, it looks like we're going to Raleigh-Durham now." And I said, "Oh man, I guess that's official because it's an ACARS out of sterile." And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, hey, we're just gonna have to roll with it." Now the captain actually had plans in Denver. I guess he has some friends up there that he was going to reconnect with from his, I guess, Air Force days, and so he had been talking about, hey, when we get to Denver, I want to apologize ahead of time, but I'm probably not going to meet up. You actually said you're more than welcome to come with us, but I do have some friends I'm trying to meet up with, and we've kind of been talking about it for the last couple of days because I knew I was going to have this long Denver overnight. And he said, if you want to join us, that's well, but if not, if you want to just go ahead and do your own thing, I'm going to meet up with my friends. So anyway, long story short, we're now going to Raleigh-Durham. So, had to just accept the change and start getting our mindset that, hey, we're going to be going to Raleigh-Durham instead of Denver. There's really nothing you can really do. At that point, you're in the air flying the airplane. You can't do anything.
Right.
But I kind of lost my train of thought of what I was going to say about that. But
so Raleigh was where you were going to be rescheduled.
So Raleigh was where we were going to go. But actually, the original trip was going to have us overnight in Denver, and then the very next day we were supposed to leave Denver late in the afternoon. And we were going to go from Denver to Chicago, and then last leg was Chicago to Dallas. So it was just a two-day trip. However, the arrival time into Dallas was after midnight. So, in my mind, that's a 3-day trip.
Was it after
right?
1:31 in the morning?
Yeah, 1:59, right. So, no, that's the thing. So it wasn't. But we're scheduled to arrive at, I don't know, 3 p.m. Technically on the third day, but, on. So, knowing that, I didn't like the trip because it got back so late. A lot of aviators, if you're like me, I'm sure you like that too, Tony. Is the last day would be a perfect trip. Would be the last day to have one flight back to your home base, get in fairly early. That way you can hop in the car, drive home, and then spend the rest of the day with your family and still have
and done.
One and done,
Yep,
right?
yep.
Well, mine was not only not one and done, I would have to go through Chicago in a snowstorm to get home to Dallas.
This was last week.
This was Thursday. Yeah, last week. Yeah, Thursday to Friday.
How many inches did they get?
How many inches they got, but they didn't see me there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the delays were, they had tons of cancellations, hundreds of cancellations. And so the change in the schedule for me going to Raleigh-Durham actually ended up working in our favor, because now, instead of working that second day, coming back late through Chicago, we just spent the night in Raleigh-Durham. The next morning, woke up, flew one flight to Miami, and then we just hopped on a deadhead from Miami back to our home base in Dallas.
Yeah.
And we got in at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So, 6 hours or so, maybe even more, because of the possible delays that we were going to encounter in Chicago. So we got in 6 hours or so more earlier than what we were originally scheduled to do.
Yeah.
So that was a success, and I was happy about it. And it turns out the captain was pretty happy about that too. So we were both looking forward to finishing the trip and getting home.
Yeah. And I love it when that happens. That happened to me a few weeks ago as well. I think I talked about when I was deadheading back from Miami for whatever reason. And originally I was supposed to be done at midnight in LA, and we ended up landing at 7 p.m. So it's like, wow, I get to go home and have dinner. This is amazing.
This was great.
So yeah, sometimes the trips fall apart. It can be frustrating, but if you focus on the positive aspects of it, as an aviator that does this, schedule changes happen.
Yeah, they do.
Early on in the career, I'm very fortunate that my significant other, I used to call and say, okay, I'm going to hop on the 7 p.m. flight out of Chicago. I should land, and I'll be home, and I'll get home at this time. And I had like the timetables, I had everything, traffic, I had it all like figured out, right? Because my technical brain wants to have it all figured out.
Right.
So she, after a few months, she says, you know what? Don't do that anymore. Don't call me. Don't tell me you're on until your butt is in a seat with a seatbelt strapped around it on your commute. Don't call me. I'm sick and tired of you calling me going, oh, I missed that one because the jumpsuit was full, and now I'm taking the next one, and then I missed that one because of weather. And I don't want to hear it because the anxiety.
That is such a familiar story.
Is it? Yeah. So I'm not the only one. So I learned early on that, I'm fortunate to have someone who understands the nature of the job.
Yes.
That's like, you get home when you get home. I don't want you stressing about it. Don't worry about us. We'll be fine. We've been on our own for 4 days anyway, right?
Right.
So, and I learned that early on, and I'm very grateful because that has reduced the stress levels in the relationship. With the family, with, everybody involved. So, when we do get these opportunities where the sequence falls apart and we end up back in base earlier than anticipated, sometimes I don't even say anything.
Right.
And then I text, I'm like, well, I'm on the way home. Oh, you're catching a flight? I'm like, no, I'm in the car. I'm on the way home. And
which
always
brings
it's like,
me to my next.
Let me kick out the party.
I was going to say, guns don't kill people. It's
people
husbands who come home from.
People kill people. Well,
compliments to Larry the Cable Guy right there.
There you go. So the flight path that most arrivals come in to Los Angeles from the east goes right over my house. And I often look out the window from the right side of the cockpit and look down and go, oh, the cable guy's at my house again.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yeah, we just went over my house. There's what's that UPS truck doing there again,
I have a similar situation. I live right on the final for 18 right into DFW. So as the planes are arriving, or when I'm coming home, since I'm on the right side of the airplane, as soon as we put the landing gear down, if you look down, you can see my neighborhood. So I kind of joke around about that too. Hey, the pool guy's still there.
Yeah.
The postman's delivering a big package. So I'm still here.
Yeah, audio's good.
Good. Okay.
Yeah, just jokes, ladies and gentlemen, just jokes.
Yeah. Anyway.
So on your sequence that you had last week, you were telling me that you had a situation where somebody broke your jump seat. What was all that about?
Well, so yes, the Raleigh-Durham overnight. The next day we were going from Raleigh-Durham to Miami, and it was going to be a full flight. And we noticed on the non-rev list was a commuter pilot, a fellow Legacy Airlines pilot, trying to get to work. He lived in Raleigh-Durham, and he was commuting to Miami. So he had listed for and reserved a jump seat, and the only people that can trump him on the jump seat is obviously training, and then the higher level above that would be the FAA. Well, usually with training, you'd kind of know about that a little beforehand, so you can plan your travel accordingly. But when the FAA decides to take the jump seat, they don't give you any advance notice at all. They just show up at the gate, usually a half hour or maybe even less before and they just let you know that they're going to be doing an observation, a safety audit, and that they would like to ride in your jump seat.
Right.
So, unfortunately, we had to break the news to our fellow company pilot that, hey, the FAA's here, and it's a full flight, and he's going to take the jump seat. And so off we go down to do a pre-flight. And this particular FAA guy was going to kind of ghost me around the airplane for the walk around as one of those guys.
Right.
But, he was, and you and I have worked with FAA guys as a check airman and as flight instructors. They're just humans. They're doing their job, and obviously, everything's about safety, and I want to be as safe as possible. And I don't want to break any regulations, and that's not how I operate. I want to do everything the right way. So anyway, he was a great guy. He did the walk around with me, and it wasn't like he was looking over my shoulder. We just walked around the airplane together, and I did my thing and he did his thing, and met back at the stairs, went back up to the cockpit, and we started to get settled in for our flight. And so he we do our pre-flight in the cockpit, and a lot of the checks are checking the safety items and the fire bottle, your smoke goggle, your oxygen mask, and everything. So since he was going to be occupying the jump seat, he put the jump seat down, and our in the 737 the oxygen mask is hidden by the jump seat when it's stowed, so you have to put the jump seat down to check it.
Right.
Actually, no, I got that wrong. It's not.
It's above.
It's above. It's above it. Yeah. So sorry about that. But anyway, he got in and he put the jump seat down, sat down, and checked his oxygen mask and everything checked out fine. But you can tell he has been in that jump before, because he started talking about prior experience when he jump seated on another 737. It wasn't. I don't think it was Americans. I think it was actually a different carrier.
On who? A Legacy.
A Legacy.
Oh yeah.
Did I say it wrong?
That's fine.
Yeah. A Legacy. So he jump seat on another Legacy Airlines. He found something defective with the jump seat, and it was just the way that the seat back latched into the
onto the clip.
into the clip.
Ah.
And I guess what's supposed to happen is when you latch the back of the jump seat into the clip, it's supposed to lock into place. And then to release it to stow the jump seat, you have to pull up on a latch, and that releases the latch. You pull up on the lever, and that releases the latch to allow you to stow the jump seat. Well, the mechanism of the latch on one side of the jump seat was damaged, so it wasn't latching properly. So you can actually put the jump seat into the holder, but it wouldn't latch in and stay in place. And be honest with you, I don't think anybody would have noticed that, as a jump seat rider.
Right.
When you walk into your Airbus, I don't think you roll the jump seats out and check the you're not planning on using it right then and there, right? So,
well, yes and no. And I have hundreds of hours jump seating commuting for over a decade, and both the Airbus and the 737 and even some 75, 76 stuff. And so I'm very familiar with the 73 jump seat. There's only one at legacy carriers on the 73.
Right.
Some other airlines, I believe Alaska and I think United might have two in a few of theirs, where there's another one.
I think
behind
Southwest has two.
Southwest too, yeah. So, and the second one is almost unusable if your captain, because it's right behind the captain seat. If your captain's over 5'5", forget it, because you have no leg room at all. It's
no
technically there, but I mean, and I've been
incredible that they even have one there.
I've been that guy in the jump seat.
Oh, poor guy.
Chicago to Seattle. Yeah. No.
My legs are getting numb just thinking about it.
My chiropractor loved me. So that latch, if the one you're talking about there in the 7.3, if one or both of them don't lock the seat in place, the seat belts are actually connected to the back of the jump seat.
That's correct.
So in a scenario where there's maybe extreme turbulence, what is holding you in place is the seatbelt that is strapping you into the jump seat itself. That is it's a folding jump seat. And if that latch is not there, then, or the latch is inoperative, then you could fly up and become unattached to the aircraft. And the seat itself has a hinge point, so it's attached, but it'll move. You could get injured. So I can understand. Now, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, totally.
I don't think most people would even check that, see that. No. I mean, I've seen so many jump seats with like little bent tabs here and there. Sometimes I could just, it's not a big deal. Other times I'm like, oh, Captain, did you know this? Okay.
Yeah.
The Airbus jump seat for the 320 series, or the 320 family as we call it, there are two. One's behind the captain, which even if your captain is 7 feet tall, no problem. Just because the sheer size of the cockpit environment. Yeah. But the main jump seat is a sliding jump seat that is against the circuit breaker panel on the back behind the FO. And when it's stowed, it's behind the FO seat. It's folded up and no big deal. When I have a jump seater, you had mentioned, do you even check? Well, actually, part of the pre-flight, I have to slide that out and check the circuit breakers.
Oh, that makes sense.
Every time I'm new on an aircraft, which is basically every leg, there's a latch. I pull out the jump seat. I slide it out. I check. There's, I think, about 10 circuit breakers back there that are dusty and, for the life of the aircraft, probably have never been touched because they're non-essential. So then I check them and I slide the seat back. So there's that mechanism. Now, the seat belts on that, the headrest is what folds. So you have to fold up the headrest. And a lot of times I see these seat belts that are not going through the headrest. They pulled them out. Whoever rode in the seat pulled them out of the headrest and just left them dangling on the lower part of the backrest. So if I know I'm going to have a jump seater, I always pre-flight it, put the seat belts through the little strap on the headrest so that it is appropriate. And I always check, because sometimes what happens is they get in the jump seat, we push off the gate, we're taxiing out, and I've seen this happen a few times. And then the jump seater goes to put on his shoulder harness or her shoulder harness, and they're locked, they're jammed because someone has, they slid out. Who knows what happened? And you can't pull those shoulder straps out, and now you can't take off because the jump seater doesn't have their shoulder harnesses on because they can't get them frozen. So yeah, that sometimes does happen. I do check it, and it's just one more thing to check. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as we mentioned on the onset of this interview and this recording, that we were trying to use FaceTime as the medium to record this episode, and we had some clicking noises, and we had the audio seemed okay, at least at this point, but we lost connection. And so we're trying something different. Halfway through, we're now back on with tablets and Skype. So hopefully that will resolve some of the audio issues that we were having earlier. So to continue on, Rob was talking about the FAA inspector who came on to do a maintenance audit on a flight for Legacy. They do this. Not much heads up, obviously. It's the whole point is kind of like when the FDA comes to a restaurant and to do an inspection, you don't say, hey, by the way, next week, 5 o'clock, I'm going to be there to inspect your restaurant. You just kind of show up. Right. Yeah. Or the day of, you say, hey, okay, I'm coming over in an hour. So surprise.
Exactly.
So the same thing happens with aviation, with 121 carriers, which airline carriers, and inspections. So he came in. You mentioned that he sat in the jump seat, noticed that there was an issue, minor issue, but an issue nonetheless. And so what happened from there?
Okay, so he noticed the problem with the jump seat, and he in casual conversation with him, he mentioned that he had the same problem while he was doing the same kind of check at a competitor airline, and he had basically kicked himself off the jump seat because the jump seat could not be fixed. So we had to go through the maintenance procedures, which requires us to MEL the jump seat, making it inoperable. And so it was the same situation here. So we called maintenance. Maintenance came out and they took a look at it and decided they couldn't fix it because it was going to require new. And there it is. Yep, new parts. And so they were decided that they had to MEL the jump seat, and the FAA guy said, he'd have to just go ahead and say, not fly with us and go ahead and take another flight and observe another flight, which is, kind of a bummer because we were full and we did, like I said earlier, we did have a fellow aviator trying to get to work. And, I guess the jump seat was broken. So technically, he probably wouldn't have been able to sit in it anyways, but the chances of him actually finding out that it was broken were slim to nil, and everybody would have gotten to work and everybody would have been just fine. But, it's one of those things that, hey, you just got to roll with it. And now, and the FAA is always welcome in my jump seat. I get along with those guys. They're obviously oversee the, all the flying in the country and everything. And, they're there for safety, and I want to make sure that, they get to do their stuff too. So.
Yeah, I learned that very early on. I used to get really nervous because, you're doing your job. And can you imagine if you're an electrician and you have an inspector looking over your shoulder going, you spliced that wire a little too short. I'm going to have to cite you. That's
a lot of pressure.
It is a lot of pressure. But then as I grew in my career and I started holding these positions where I was now doing some training, doing some inspecting of my own through either the check airman status or whatnot, or even back at Tailwind when we were working with our principal operating inspector for the FAA for Tailwind.
That's right.
I developed a very good relationship with him. I think I mentioned it in a very early episode where we had MELs on the Cessna 172s. So that if a landing light was an op, you didn't scrap the lesson for the day. You just put it in the book and the minimum equipment list. If it's there, a minimum equipment list in the aircraft maintenance log, the AML, as you mentioned earlier, you put the the broken jump seat in the AML, and you verified that it was an MEL-able item.
Right.
And you end up, if you don't have time to fix it, you just write it up and you fix it down line. But then you just can't use that item. And I learned early on that, these FAA guys, they're just people like you and I, and they're not there to crack the whip. They're just there to make sure you're doing everything the way you're supposed to.
Absolutely.
And if you operate every day the way you're supposed to, which is standard operating procedures or SOPs, and you're reading the checklist the way it's supposed to, it does two things. For one, it makes your life so much easier when you go to recurrent training and you're in a simulator, and now you're going through procedures, and you're not even thinking about reading a checklist a certain way or flying the aircraft a certain way or making a call out, because you do it day in, day out.
And that is something as an instructor and as an IOE check airman, I used to preach that to my students all the time. I said, study your best, know as much as you can know. And when you're done with training, operate exactly how you did it in the simulator,
right,
in front of the check airman, because if that's the way you do it on the flight line, when it comes back time to come back for recurrent, or you're being observed in that particular case, or you're getting a line check, that you operate, it's just standard procedure, just your automatic way of thinking that this is how it's done and this is how we do it, and
right,
you have no problems. And it's just when you go back to study when you study for recurrent, you're just basically refreshing yourself, not relearning what you're supposed to say or what you needed to say,
right,
or what the other guy is supposed to say. You just go back and refresh yourself with the stuff that you don't get to touch on.
Exactly. And it's no different when you have an inspector in your jump seat in the cockpit.
Yeah, exactly.
They're there to observe. And if you're doing something that they don't understand, possibly, or they don't agree with, then they're going to point you out. Hey, this is not the way I understand. This is the way you should be doing it. Now, when it comes to an FAR, or a Federal Aviation Regulation, if you bust an FAR on the line, whether someone's looking over your shoulder or not, you bust an FAR, you bust an FAR. And,
exactly.
So we have programs where people make mistakes. We're humans. We're pilots that are humans. Right. And when you do that, you can self-disclose through ASAP program, which I highly
it's a great program.
Encourage. And
absolutely,
as long as
we make mistakes,
right? And as long as you didn't intentionally do something to hold my beer, watch this, and you're dang it, Bobby, the airplane just ain't right. As long as you're not doing something like off the rails.
You're pretty good at that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So, you probably are going to be okay. The FAA and the company and the union usually get involved in these, once a month meetings, and they go, okay, this is what happened on this flight. The pilots disclosed that they busted an altitude by 300 feet because of a misunderstanding through the controller, and this is what led to it, and this is what they believe caused it, and it was a human error. And it's noted. Thank you.
And we're actually having an issue with that right now with the 737's software flying in the Charlotte. The vertical navigation is not meeting some of the altitude restrictions on one of the arrivals, and so they put out a publication saying, "Hey, you guys need to have a little more heightened awareness about this particular fix and this arrival with the 737 with the certain FMS software in it, because of all the ASAP reports that have been coming in from the pilots." And so it's a very helpful program to not only self-disclose and it's used for the company and the FAA to try to identify areas where that needs an improvement or correction, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And it's helping us out because now we know about this. Pilots flying into Charlotte in a 737 with that particular software, we'll actually get a message in our release saying, "Hey guys, when you're on this arrival, pay attention. You may want to start down earlier," or I'm not exactly sure how they word it, but I think they actually give you a recommendation for an altitude and airspeed to actually manually plug into the FMS so that the VNav will respond to it accordingly.
So pilot correction until the next software update gets
exactly
loaded. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
So this FAA inspector, you guys wrote up the jump seat. He went to the next flight, obviously, and did an inspection on the next flight.
Right. Yeah. And that obviously we didn't talk to him after he left our flight. And these inspectors they're very detail oriented too. I think you when I start talking about it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, they really document everything. They write down your certificate number, they write down your medical, and, so this particular guy, because he knew that the seat, and I think they're obviously held. They have bosses too, so they got to report to, and their bosses probably want to know, hey, why didn't you go on Legacy Airlines flight 123? Which is what you originally were trying to do. I'm sure he had to, hey, here's the documentation. The jump seat was something wrong with the jump seat, and so we took a different flight.
Yeah, I actually did that job for a while. I was my last 2.5 years at Sandpiper Regional.
Right.
I was asked to be what's called an FAC, or an FAA authorized check airman, because when you upgrade to captain, you'll get your obviously your training, your IOE training, your initial operating experience training, and then you'll get a line check, and the line check determines that the check airman says, okay, this guy, he's proficient in all aspects of what the job requires, and he's good to go. And the next, after your IOE is complete and your line check's complete, now you're on the line flying with a FO that could be a new hire. So here you are.
Yeah.
Right? So before that can happen, the FAA likes to sit and do an observation flight of the check airman while receiving, if at all possible, their line check from the company check airman. Now, the FAA was inundated with these observation rides because at the time, Sandpiper was upgrading people at astronomical numbers. And so they have a budget, because obviously these inspectors are getting paid to come out and ride the jump seat, and they're trying to maximize their time. So in a day, they could do 4 of these observations. Well, as their budget dwindled and as their time was required elsewhere and other factors of the operation, they just didn't have enough inspectors. So there was a backlog, and they asked a few of the more senior check airmen at the company to do this for them, where they acted in representation of the FAA to do these jump seat observations.
So you're essentially the FAA for that particular flight,
right?
FAA
authorized
FAA
company person,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had the privilege. Did you? Yeah, I had the privilege of doing that, and all I did was sit there and make sure that the regulations weren't busted. No FARs were violated. It was not a pass or fail. It was a complete or incomplete. And the report I had to fill out and email out to our actual POI, or actually it was a certificate management office inspector, the CMO. Mm-hmm. So every time I did one of these, and of course I had to have name, rank, and serial number, their pilot's license, their name, everything, how it appears on their license, the medical. How. So here I am.
It's very detail oriented.
Yeah, and so that's what the FAA is doing. So if you have, if you're a pilot on the line, you have an FAA inspector, and they, I need to see your license and medical. That's what they're doing. They're just making sure. If they find a clerical error that's not your problem, they're not going to stop you. They're just going to go, let me just make sure you fix this as soon as possible.
It's not the end of your career.
Right. So they're not there to bust you, because trust me, as a representative, the last thing I wanted to do is fill out 2 or 3 pages of paperwork to explain what happened. So when in doubt, there's a little tap on the back of the seat. It's like, are you sure about that altitude?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And didn't they always greet you with didn't the FAA always greet you with, "Hi, Tony, I'm so and so with the FAA, and I'm here to help."
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So it was a great experience, and I'm sure you can attest to the same thing.
I totally agree. That was the best experience I've had so far, and I don't know if I'm given that opportunity again, I'm probably gonna capitalize on it. Oh yeah. Why not? I had a good time. I'm sure it'll be equivalent here or maybe even better. So I don't know. Yeah.
My favorite part of it all was it forced me to stay in the books.
Oh, big
somebody
time.
asked you a question, I'd get a phone call or a text message. Hey, do you know this? And it's like, well, I don't recall, but give me
let's learn
30
together.
minutes.
Yeah.
I'll call you back and I'll find it. And if I can't find it, I'll find somebody who can. And
yeah, absolutely.
And so it really did. And nowadays, I think with the electronic flight bags, the EFBs, there was a time where we would go in the crew room and all revisions, all updates on your charts had to be manually entered into your little binder.
Thank God those days are over.
How many hours of your life were spent thumbing through pages? But the benefit to that.
Well, think about it too. How many times did you fly around? I mean, I probably should be saying this, but with your revisions not in your manuals yet because you just couldn't get to them.
If you didn't get to the crew room early enough and you had so what you did is you thumbed through the revision quickly to make sure that where you were going didn't have an up. So you pulled those 3 or 4 pages out, threw them loosely into your trip book, and then while you're flying along at cruise and you're thumbing through and you look over, and both pilots are hundreds of pages all over the cockpit.
Pages all over the cockpit.
And you knew it was done because when you landed, the garbage bag was stuffed with paper.
It's so funny to talk
but
about
the benefit to that was, especially with company revisions and policy changes, when you plug that page in, you had that change bar. And I knew guys that would take a little highlighter and they would just highlight the changes, read it one time real quickly, a couple seconds, and then they threw it in the book. And so you had...
Or if they had notes on the previous page, they would transfer them over to the new page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you kind of always had a current, up-to-date, at least understanding of what changed and how it changed and how it affects you. In today's technologically advanced, you open up your EFB, you push the sync button, right? The sync button, then it goes boop, 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 boop. Your sync is complete. You are now up to date.
They need to add that sound to it too, so that you're up to date. Boop, boop,
yep,
boop, boop.
Exactly. Thanks. So then you go and you're flying along, and you're flying with somebody, and you say something, or they say something, and you're like, well, actually, my favorite is, well, actually, Captain, that changed about 6 months ago. What? What do you mean it changed? Yeah, that changed about 6 months ago, and it's on. Let me find it real quick. So, because what else are you gonna do, right? So you go, and now, what used to be 2 or 3 books that were in your kit bag that weighed it down to like 40 pounds. Now,
something like that. Yeah.
Now you have like a little 4-pound EFB, right? So now you have to find it in there. So you go through the search feature, and good luck with your 5,000 pages of redundant information.
Yeah.
So now you find it 30 minutes later, which in the past would have been, all right, section 13, flip, tab, table of contents. There you go. 30 seconds. Done. Now it's like,
now you knew how deep your thumb had to go into the manual to get to the chapter.
Right.
Now,
or you had that little Post-it sticker that was sticking out on the engine failure page because you knew that in the simulator you had to go to that page because you were going to do it. And then if on the line it happened, oh yeah, I got that bookmark right there. So now it becomes you become a finder.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And so the policies aren't really, I think, as current with today's aviator. You really have to, after you push that sync button, if you don't go through those 2 or 3 pages of changes.
Revision highlights, yeah.
So does that make us weaker as a group? I don't know. I'm not the one to say that, but for me personally, I think that I like the fact that I get to push a button and 30 seconds later, I've done my revision. But at the same time, I think there needs to be something in there, maybe even a PowerPoint presentation.
You're right.
Right? Something just that the company says, hey, these are the changes.
Just a quick video. Here's a
hyperlink to it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I agree. I totally agree. And and I don't find myself looking through those manuals as often as I used to do because how convenient it is with the EFB. It's just not like having a physical book where you're flipping through the pages. And sometimes when you flip through the pages of a book or manuals, you'll be looking for one thing, but you'll actually come across something else that you remembered you needed, you wanted more information about, and bang, now you
that's
just found
where it is. Yeah,
exactly. So now you've doubled your your learning right then in that one little event, trying to find one thing. And with the EFB, it's tough to do that because you either go directly to the page that you're looking for, and so you don't you totally avoid everything else, or you don't get to that page and you just like, well, you didn't find what you're looking for, so you go back to the menu and try to come back to it, and it ends up becoming a I think they need help with these manuals.
Yeah, and they're really pushing. Every time there's a recurrent training, I just had R18 recently, and they're really pushing on teaching us how to search for things. I know we spent about 20 minutes learning how to search for things in the manual. There was a class on that. So,
that's good.
Earlier we were talking about how the sequence kind of fell apart and how this sequence started, and it reminded me of how this sequence I'm currently on. I had one leg yesterday, red eye to Miami, and I was kind of happy to hear. I was in the cockpit. I had completed my pre-flight, my walk around, and we were just about getting ready to run through the FMS, the flight management system, and go through the flight plan, make sure it was programmed in correctly. All the pre-flight procedures were dealt with, and we were getting ready to do it before start, before takeoff, before pushing off the gate checklist, whatever your company calls it.
Right.
So we're all getting ready to do, and I get a text message out of the blue, and my phone was sitting there, hadn't turned it off yet, and it was from a coworker of ours from Sandpiper Regional, and he texted me. He goes, "Hey Tony, do you remember me? This is your buddy Andy from Sandpiper. I am actually parking at a gate in LA, and we're a little bit late, and I'm really trying to catch that flight to get to Miami because he and his wife and daughter were going on a cruise today." And he says, I'm really trying to catch that flight. Is there anything you can do to delay that flight so that I get there and I get on? And of course, as a first officer, we don't have that authority. And if it really depends who you talk to, captains don't have that authority either. No, at least not anymore, unless you're
You can only defer to flight departure for safety and weather and stuff like that. Not for, hey, I'll be there in 5 minutes after departure. Can you hold it for me?
Right. Even passengers, sometimes with international connections, they get really upset because they're like, well, we have international connections. Just hold the flight for us. And you're going to make it up in the air, right? But the DOT does control our stats.
On-time arrival stats.
It has to be D plus 0, meaning departure time, when you're scheduled departure time, plus 0 minutes. So if you're even 1 minute late, you're late. Late is late. And on arrival, we have an A plus 14. So on arrival, if you're within 14 minutes of your arrival time at the gate, you're on time.
It's considered on time.
Right.
Yep.
So why is this important? Well, because of the way the air traffic control system is set up in our country, every airline or operator that is scheduled has to have those schedules approved by the ATC or FAA. So it's all a scheduled operation is just that. And if you change your schedule, not departure delays, obviously, but if you change your schedule, it has to be approved.
Exactly.
This is a process that involves a lot of paperwork, a lot of red tape, and it could take weeks, if not months, to change an airline's flight schedule. So it's important to depart and arrive on time so that the air traffic control system, which is already at maximum capacity, isn't overwhelmed and then causing other flights that might be on time to now take gate holds, delays, and holding because you were late, right?
Yeah.
So for an employee to go, hey man, can you hold the plane? Just I'm just trying to catch a ride. It's kind of a big deal. Now, with pleasure, if I can do anything I can, or if I can relay that information to the captain, or even when I was a captain over at Sandpiper, if I could do anything I can to take a couple minutes to get a last minute passenger on the last flight of the night, or to take a fellow employee just trying to catch a ride to get home or get to work or whatever, I will go out of my way. I will step off that airplane. I'll stand onto the jet bridge. Barry Skiff, who is an author, has been writing for Flying Magazine and AOPA Magazine for many, many years, decades. Wonderful guy. I read his article every month when I get my AOPA Magazine in the mail. And he wrote an article about 5 years ago discussing this very topic, how, we've become so enamored with this performance, on-time performance, efficiency. The airlines want their stock prices to be high and our passengers to be happy and our shareholders to be happy. So we need to have a productive operation.
Right.
Well, he wrote an article called "The Power of the Brake," and when I read that, I actually cut it out of the magazine and put it in my drawer of things to keep.
Oh, did you?
Because we've kind of lost that over the past few decades, where it's like, well, the gate agents, they're the ones that control, operations. They're the ones that control on time and who we hold for and what. But
we're
right. But we have that parking brake. The captains do at least, I should say. So we have that parking brake. So if the captain steps off the jet bridge to do whatever they need to do, he or she then controls when that parking brake goes down, right? So
absolutely.
And if the gate agent says, "Well, are you willing to take the delay, Captain?" And so some captains are like, "Oh, no, let's just go." And because they don't want to deal with the headache. And other captains are like, for a couple of minutes to get an extra passenger or extra employee on. Yeah, I'll take the delay. I don't care.
Why not?
What's the company going to do? So this is the situation that unfolded. And I said, well, I'll relay to the captain what's going on. So here I am, first time meeting this guy. We introduced each other maybe 15 minutes prior. And I'm going, hey, I got this text message from a legacy airline first officer. They're running for this flight. They're trying to get to Miami. And he's asking if there's anything we can do. He's going to run. And he's, well, I can't delay. I can't take a delay for an employee running. I mean, there's another flight after this at 11:30 tonight. I mean, it's 2.5 hours away, but we'll do what we can. And I said, okay, I'll text him that we'll do everything we can. So I texted him. I'm like, yeah, do what you can to get here, man, because we're going to do what we can. But I mean, he goes, hey, that's all I'm asking for. Thank you. You're awesome. So I stand up or about now 10 minutes prior to departure. We're pretty much all boarded up. And I'm getting ready to hit the lav one last time before we shut the door. It's a long flight.
Well, most of us do. Yep.
Exactly. And one of the gate agents comes down and says, okay, we're all boarded up, ready to go, Captain. We have so many people on board. And Captain goes, well, we have a runner. What? Yeah, we have an employee trying to run for the jump seat. Did you check in with? She's like, no one. I'm like, his name's Andy. He's on the way. I tell her. She goes, oh, no problem. We still have a little bit of time. I'll run up there, which is a little rare. And I thought, wow, this is great. Hopefully. So I text him. I'm like, are you on the way?
That's great.
Right. Are you on the way? I text him. I was like, all right, because I just sent the gate agent back up. The captain told her that you were coming. So she went up and great. And just then, I'm standing in the basically the cockpit door area, and I'm getting ready to jump in the lav just to hit it one more time. And this passenger stands up from first class. Middle-aged man stands up, gives eye contact with me, and he had this look of dread on his face.
Oh no!
And he goes, "I need to get off the plane. I left a very important bag in the Admiral's Club, and I need to go. I can't go without that." I'm like, "I'm so sorry that happened to you." I said, "I cannot tell you that we will hold the flight for you. You need to speak with a gate agent, and I can tell you that we're ready to go." Okay.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Gate agent," and I said, "She just went up to the top. Before you leave the jet bridge, talk to her, because if you go out that door, I cannot guarantee that we'll still be here when you get back." So
very important.
He goes running. Now he ran up the jet bridge, no bags, nothing.
Oh no, so he didn't bring everything's on the airplane.
Everything's on the plane. So I turn my head and bring my attention to my captain. I said, "Captain, I just want to let you know this passenger just bolted off the airplane from first class. He forgot a bag in the club." And, I told him that he has to talk to an agent. I can't help him. And so now the captain's looking at me like,
Tony,
seriously, dude? We just met. So I'm not getting a lot of brownie points here. I'm like, hey man, I'm just the messenger. Okay. I'm gonna, so I go, I use the lav. I come out of the lav and my buddy Andy's there and he goes, dude, thank you so much for holding. I'm like, hey, I can't take credit. So, and so now the gate agent, there's a second gate agent, the one that was walking through the aircraft to make sure that every available seat was occupied,
there,
right? Because it was it was full and there were non-revs trying to get on, and so it's going to be full.
Yeah, they want to fill every seat.
Every seat. So, so I sit in my seat now. My buddy's like getting situated in the cockpit. He's showing the captain his documentation that he's required to have, his boarding card, and now the second gate agent's like, "Oh, we're ready to close the door. We gotta close the door." And the captain goes, well, we had a passenger that stepped off the aircraft. Oh, we're not waiting for them. We're not taking a delay. And the captain goes, well, he stepped off the aircraft. He didn't take anything with him. Just then, his wife stands up, walks up to the galley, the first class galley, and says, we're not going. This airplane's not going anywhere. My husband's not on it, and we can't leave. Now the gate agent's like doing a 180 going, well, we can't wait for anybody. So now there's a confrontation. And I'm like, oh my God.
Look what I have created.
And I'm like, don't look at me like I did this. I didn't do this. So Andy's like trying to get situated. The captain's trying to get up and it's a tight space. So I'm like, Andy, let the captain walk out. So he gets up, goes onto the jet bridge. Right?
Uh-oh.
Yes. Yep. Power move. Yep. Thank you.
Yep.
Power move.
Nice.
So he goes on the jet bridge and he goes, well, I need to understand what's going on because right now there's some confusion. We had a last-minute passenger vacate the aircraft and didn't take any of his things. This is a security issue. If he left the bag on the aircraft, we either need to remove the bag or we need to bring back this passenger.
Move, Captain.
Mind you, this was at D+0 at this point.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The gate agent gets in his face and goes, well, you're taking the delay. And the captain goes, listen, I don't care if there's a delay or not, we have to resolve the issue at hand.
Right.
And he stays very calm.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I feel good that he's doing the right thing. At the same time, I feel like I was kind of put in the middle of the situation, and that's not a good first impression. Meanwhile, Andy's he's sweating because he ran a terminal over from Terminal 4 to Terminal 5, and he said he was like running up the escalator with his bags, and there were other pilots laughing at him. And
he's got the commuter run going.
So just then, I look back, and because I'm trying to keep an eye on what's happening, and I see this passenger walk right past everybody and sit in a seat. And the gate agent goes, "Oh, he's here. Let's go." So close the door, drop the brake. We ended up departing 2 minutes past departure time, which is a delay.
Amazing. Yeah.
Okay, a delay.
Yeah.
But everybody got situated.
Yeah.
No one got bumped off. No one got left behind. No security issues were. So, and it was all not because of the situation that happened, but because of the philosophy that our captain had that day, last night, that he just stood up quietly. He didn't initiate a confrontation with a gate agent that was in his face. He didn't tell the passenger, sorry, we're not taking delay. He just stood up and said, let's find out what's going on here.
He did a really good job. You could tell he's an
it.
experienced captain, and those are the kind of guys in situations that we all need to learn from, because there's many different ways he could have handled it, and he obviously chose to handle it in that particular way, and he did a good job. Sounds like a great captain to be flying with.
Yeah. Well, he right now, at this very moment, as I'm checking my watch here, is flying into and probably just about close to landing in Ecuador right now.
Wow.
On his Latin terrain qualification. Meanwhile, I'm here recording a podcast from my very luxurious hotel room from the 15th floor of the Hyatt Regency in Miami. And I got to admit, last night I went to Whole Foods, picked up some grub, and grabbed a 6-pack of some local IPA that was, nice. I had a couple last night. And, surprisingly, it was called Hop Gun.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it good?
I'm not a critic. I am a fan of a good IPA, and I, one or two at the most, because I'm there for the experience and the taste. And usually with the crew, you go out on an overnight and you have a good local beer. I always shoot for the local.
Me too.
And so when I saw it was a local, in the cooler there at the Whole Foods, and Hop
Give
Gun.
it a try.
Yeah, Hop Gun. I like a hoppy beer. Yeah, a good IPA.
Sounds good. Sounds
It was not as strong. It was more like a lager.
Oh yeah.
So it was good. Okay, and
Yeah.
I'm not like the kind of guy who'll give you like, oh, the tannins on this one was, no. It was good. A good summer IPA, but not my favorite.
Well, hey, talking about beer though, real quick, if you ever, and this is a plug from my buddy who's in Santa Barbara, if you ever make your way up to the Santa Barbara area, go check out my buddy's restaurant. It's actually a microbrewery. It's called Hollister Brewing Company.
Hollister Brewing Company in Santa Barbara, California.
Santa Barbara. Good friend of mine. I've known him since I was before I even joined the military back in 1995. I think I knew him since 1990. So we've been buddies for a long time, and he's the owner and proprietor of that microbrewery. And they brew everything right on site. They have a really good brewmaster, and it's a good place. It's a good, if you like beer, IPAs, and stuff like that, that's a place to go.
Any particular favorites from his?
And they change them all the time. And he was ex-military, and so one of his unique things is he'll name some of the beer after squadrons that he's been in. So like, one would, I'm not sure this is an actual beer, but like a triple nickel squadron in Italy is the name of a squadron. So he'll name a beer after that squadron. So it'll be the triple nickel lager or a triple nickel IPA or something like that. So it changes daily or changes weekly. So I'm not sure what he has currently on tap, but
that is Hollister Brew Co. HollisterBrewCo.com. Really nice webpage here. Good beer makes me smile.
That's it.
And he talks about quality, craft, and community. We are a locally owned and operated brew pub, and our goal is to provide and maintain a comfortable, unpretentious environment that appeals to our local clientele as well as beer and food aficionados from around the country. We are here to exceed expectations, to introduce people to things they may not have had before, and to do it in a fun and educational way. And pretty, just from the website here, it's a pretty big place.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And there's a couple photos there. Yeah. The food
They'll have
looks
live
real
entertainment and great staff there. Make you feel welcome and provide great service. So
well, I've already picked out two that I want to try out. One's called Broken Atlas IPA. It's a 6.4% ABV, and it's a light-bodied American IPA. He's got a pretty long list here. Moon Commute, a hazy IPA. Oh man, hazy IPAs in the summertime. Blasted with Galaxy and Strata hops. Out of this world aromas and tropical fruit will take you to the moon and back. Yeah. Absolutely great plug. I love it.
There you go.
I am bookmarking this right now. I'm going to check that place out. And I will have descriptions and the links in the show notes at the end of the episode.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about today in terms of what we've been chatting about?
Well, we can go on and on and on about topics and off on tangents like we always seem to do, and that's what's so fun about it. I honestly, I'm at the end of my endurance level for this podcast right now.
Yeah, I know we both have. You have to go get some grub and get ready for your next flight.
Exactly. I got to fly back to Dallas. I got to fly back to Dallas this afternoon. I think we got about a 5:30 or 6 o'clock flight out of Minneapolis to Dallas, and then I'm going to turn right back around and come back to Minneapolis tonight for another frozen tundra layover.
Nice.
I got to get ready and go get something to eat and possibly get a run on the treadmill, because I'm not going outside in this weather. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well,
crazy.
Not to rub it in, I think I'm going to go for a run outside in Miami. Although it is overcast, but it's 62 degrees. Oh, no, 72 degrees. Make that 72. It's there you go. Warmed up from this morning. And so I'm going to do that and then
awesome.
Do some editing. And I got a couple more of those, what was it called? The Hop Gun brews with my name on it. I don't leave here till tomorrow night. So
so you better take care of those before you leave.
Absolutely. Well,
awesome.
Rob,
have one for me, by the way.
I'll have one for you and one for me. There you go.
There you go.
And listen, it's been a blast. I really enjoy sitting down with you. I look forward to having you on the show as much as possible. I think our viewers would agree that some of the things we're talking about is exactly kind of what you can expect as an aviator, into this community.
Exactly. And what we're talking about is a lot of you mentioned it in previous podcasts. What we're talking about are basic things that I get a lot of questions from my friends and family members about a day in the life of a pilot and what to expect and stuff like that. So it's great that we can use this medium to convey our experiences and stuff like that. So if you have me again, I would love to be back. I enjoy it. This is so much fun.
Officially an open invitation. We'll just make sure our schedules mash up, and we will do this as much as often, because
absolutely. We have a lot to talk about. So
and it's great. I think it all just flows so much.
It does
better.
It does.
Yeah. But again, thanks again. Enjoy your overnight and your time there, and be safe out there this evening.
You want to trade, by the way? I'll come to Miami. You come back up here to
I would love to not trade with you.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right, Rob. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, episode 20 is now complete. I want to send a special thank you out to Mr. Rob DeJesus for sitting down with me now for 2 episodes in a row to talk about all kinds of things, from class act captains that know how to handle late running passengers and employees trying to catch a ride, to how to update manuals with new EFB technology out there. We also discussed how to handle when your schedule gets torn apart in the middle of a sequence. If you're enjoying Squawk Ident, I encourage you to send us feedback. You can either do that on whatever podcast player you're listening to, or you can do it directly from the Aviator Tony website. That's at www.aviatortony.com. That's Alpha Victor, the number 8, Romeo Tango Oscar November Yankee.com. There you can check out the unique cover art that I produce for each independent episode. You can also check out the newly updated Pilot Shop, where we have polo shirts, t-shirts, luggage tags, and more. For faster access to the website, you can also save it as a home screen bookmark, aka appifying the website. Spotify listeners can listen, sponsor, give audio feedback, and share this episode with your friends and family. If you're on the social medias, we would love to have you join us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I constantly update that and respond to the direct messages that I get from fans and listeners alike. In closing, I'd like to say thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this grateful aviator. Keep the dirty side down, be safe, and take care of each other.